I'm gonna line the wall behind me with cabinets. Instead of making them out of plywood, I'm gonna make them out of steel and plywood, and I think that'll make them look kind of industrial, and I think that'll be pretty cool. So that's what I'm gonna do. I need to make a bunch of rectangular frames out of square tubing, and to help me make those consistently, I'm gonna make a template out of MDF. After that, I just need to start cutting up some very expensive steel into much smaller pieces than it is now. And I'm not at all stressed about that, because I'm gonna do it right for sure on the first try. It's all gonna work great. It's all gonna work great. I need this piece way back here. I actually built a much better track for my circular saw than this. I have a video of that if you want to check it out, but I filmed that before I filmed this. I'm gonna put some screws in this just to clamp it down a little bit better. These are gonna bust through because they're too long, but I'm just gonna take them out afterwards. Nice. I just need to drill a few holes in this for clamping. With the template all made up, I can move on to cutting up the steel. So I cut all this steel up with an angle grinder, and if I could change one thing about this project, it would be getting rid of the angle grinder. Some sort of metal chop saw would have made this process so much cleaner and so much better. I spent a ton of time truing these miters back up on the disc sander because I did such a crappy job cutting them with the angle grinder. It was by far the longest part of this entire process, and I just wish I would have just went out and bought the right tool for the job. Sanding these on the disc sander and getting them to come out exactly the same length was a total pain in my... Assuming this frame doesn't shrink around this template as I weld it and wedge it in there, I think this is gonna work pretty good. If it does wedge it in there, I'm just gonna beat it out, and if it's still good, I'll use it again, and if it's not still good, then, I don't know, I'll throw a fit for a few minutes. I'll throw some stuff against the wall. So I actually didn't have to throw anything. The template worked really well. I think it really helped me get these frames to come out uniformly. A more experienced welder wouldn't need this, I don't think. I think that they would be able to just use like one of those magnetic squares and get the job done just as well, if not better. But I'm not an experienced welder, so I was really glad I had the template. It got a little bit beat up by the end, but it made it through the process. I did have to get it out of there with a hammer every time, but like I say, it worked, and I'm glad I had it. So after getting them tacked, it was just time to weld, and this project has been a ton of welding, especially for somebody as inexperienced as I am. It started rough, the welds were horrible, I was blowing through the material all the time, but by the end, I had improved so much. So I hope that you guys can feel encouraged to get out there and try a project like this, even though you feel like you don't know how to do it, because you'll learn very quickly. The next step is to weld 4 nuts into each of these frames. I'm going to grind down the head of this bolt, and I'm also going to grind down a washer to help me insert the nuts into the frames flush with the outside surface. Grinding down the head of the bolt will give me a little bit more clearance to get the welder in there. I'm going to use 7/16 inch nuts. So drilling a 3/4 inch hole gives about the perfect fit to locate the nut in there nice and centered, but not make it too hard to get in. I've also stripped the zinc off of this nut before welding, and I'll show that process here in a little bit. So I just thread the nut that I'm going to weld in onto the modified bolt and then slip the washer between the head of the bolt and the nut. And now I can tap that in with a hammer and the washer keeps it flush. And like I say, that bolt head is ground down so that I can fit the welder in there and have a little bit of clearance. Isn't that lovely? Now that the nut is tacked in, I can weld around the entire perimeter and really lock it in. Now with the help of a little bit of Mountain Dew, I'm going to mark all these frames up so that I can then drill them all. I'm always amazed at how much time you can save by batching operations like this. I think this would have taken me like 3 or 4 hours to do if I just marked one, drilled one, marked one, drilled one. But marking them all at the same time and then drilling them all at the same time just saves loads and loads of time. These step bits are a real treat to use. Trying to drill a 3/4 inch hole in this material with a standard drill bit would have been a mess. This step drill made quick work of it. Really great. I'm going to use some muriatic acid to take the zinc off of these nuts. Make sure to use safety equipment if you do something like this, and also make sure to look up on the internet how much of everything to use. That's what I did. Let's get started. I didn't want it to splash up in my face when I was dropping those in, so I did that way. It's my understanding that this stuff puts off some sort of gas that's not good to breathe. I'm not going to go into the details any more than it's not good to breathe, because I don't know the details, but do it outside if you're going to do it. With all of that zinc stripped off of the nuts, I'm ready to weld them into the frames. This part went really well. I didn't blow through the material even one time, which I think is partially due to the fact that I was trying to put most of the heat into the nuts. But I was really happy with it. I didn't even weld my modified bolt. I didn't weld that in one time. I was expecting to have to grind that out at least 3 times. It all went really well and turned out really nicely. I'm going to mark these pieces of angle up so that I can drill a bunch of holes in them and cut them to length. And then I'll be able to assemble one of the banks of cabinets. I'm going to use this jigsaw with a metal cutting blade in it instead of the angle grinder, hoping it gives me a little bit more control. We'll see. That's great. I love that. So I probably should have explained this earlier in the video, but I want these cabinets to be able to be broken down completely. So the reason for that is twofold. One, I want it to be easy to put it in the back of a truck and move it, because I don't plan on working out of this garage forever. And secondly, I wanted to make something that was more unique than just another cabinet build for this YouTube video, because there's 1.5 million cabinet builds out there, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I hope you guys enjoy that, because it has been a ton more work to make these with bolts and nuts instead of just welding it together entirely. So you got to do that 3 more times. Got all the holes drilled, so let's assemble one of these. This assembled really well. I made the holes in the angle iron oversized, so I'd have a little bit of slop to help me deal with distortion in the welds, because there's plenty of that. When I actually go to make drawers for this, I'll probably put this together with spacers that are the same width as the drawers, so that I can clamp the spacers in and get everything square and true. So that's my plan. Hopefully that works well. While I finish putting this together, I wanted to ask you guys what you think about music in these videos. I'm always torn on whether I want to put music in the background or not. A lot of the songs that are available for YouTube videos are really repetitive and just get old really fast. And I just never know if I should just leave it as no music or if I should put it in there. I'd be really curious to know what you guys think about it. So go ahead and leave a comment if you would. Pretty sturdy. This has been a bear of a project, but I really love how it's coming together. I think this is going to make a really great set of cabinets that looks great out here. It has been difficult, but I have learned a ton. My welding skills have gone from like 0 to something, and that's super exciting. I'm looking forward to using welding in a lot of my future videos, so stay tuned for that. In the next video on this, I'm going to put drawer boxes in all of this. I'm going to make a top for it. I'll have the other bank assembled with these 3. I just don't have the angle iron to put those together right now. But I sure do appreciate you coming around and watching. Consider subscribing if you're not subscribed, and have a great day.